You were never supposed to hear that. But I did, and I'll never forget it. Before I begin, don't forget to subscribe, give this story a thumbs up, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I always read every reply. It started with a vase, a big, ridiculous, dusty old vase. My daughter Claire had asked if she could borrow it from the den when she came over last Sunday. She called it vintage ugly chic, which is Claire's way of making fun of anything from before 1990. I told her I'd think about it. Truth was, that vase used to belong to my grandmother, and while it may not look like much to her, to me, it carried a lifetime of memory. Claire had always been, how should I put this, ambitious, sharp, the kind of girl who wore lip gloss to bed just in case someone came by. I was proud of her. At least, I used to be. But lately, she'd started treating me like some little old lady who needed managing. And on that Sunday, I realized she wasn't just managing me. She was planning something. I was in the hallway when I heard her whispering to my grandson, Mason. She thought I'd stepped outside to water the porch plants, but I'd only gone to get a dish towel. After the reading, she said, I'm in. Grandma will leave me everything. You'll probably get college money, but I'm getting the house and the stocks. She told me herself years ago. There was a pause, and then Mason whispered, what if she changes her mind? And Claire? She laughed. Please, she barely remembers what she had for breakfast. She probably thinks my brother's still in the military. I stood still in that hallway, my hand clutching the towel so tight I nearly ripped it. I remembered what my mother used to say when she saw something unforgivable. Some people don't know shame until it shows up at their own funeral. Later that evening, I smiled through dinner as Claire gushed about how excited she was to redecorate the house. Mine. She wanted to knock down a wall in the kitchen, open it up, add one of those big center islands. She was talking about my home like it was already hers. And suddenly, I realized. She didn't just want the vase. She wanted to erase me. In new chapter, I started writing a letter that night, one she never thought I'd write. If they think I'm too old to notice, they're not ready for what I remember. That night, after Claire and Mason left, I didn't go to bed. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd spoon-fed her applesauce as a toddler, and pulled out a notebook I hadn't touched in years. It still smelled faintly of cedar. My late husband, Harold, used to buy them in bulk when he worked at the paper mill. He said a blank page is the most honest place on earth. So I opened it, and I started to write. Not a journal, not a letter, a record. First, I listed every account I still had in my name. Every stock Harold and I invested in back when people thought IBM was the future. I flipped through old folders, read through the yellowed pages of forgotten trusts. My hand shook, but not from weakness, from clarity. Claire thought I'd forgotten, but she didn't know what I remembered. She didn't know I still had the safety deposit box key, or that Harold had made sure I had full rights to the property, not just in life, but in legacy. She thought I was just a sweet old lady with a bad memory. She had no idea I once balanced 2 kids, 3 jobs, and a dying husband, all without missing a bill. Around midnight, I wrote 2 more names on the top of the page. Lillian Jameson, attorney, Martin Alvarez, accountant. Both had been friends of Harold. Both still sent me Christmas cards. Claire once told her friends I was financially quaint. I suppose that was her way of saying she thought I still paid for things in pennies and coupons. But I had built this life with my own hands. I had built her life too. And if she thought I would go quietly into the shadows of my own story, she didn't know me at all. By dawn, the letter was sealed. 3 pages, handwritten, no shaking hands, no crossed-out lines. I left it in the drawer beneath the vase she wanted so badly. Not because I was leaving it to her, but because it would be the last thing she saw before everything changed. In New Chapter, the day of the will reading came, and Claire's smirk didn't last long. "She really said that?" the paralegal whispered. I nodded. Claire had made her move, and I had made mine. The will reading took place on a rainy Tuesday morning. Of course it rained. Harold always said, "Every reckoning starts with clouds." We met at the old lawyer's office on Maple Street, the same office where Harold and I signed our first mortgage, and where we finalized our wills. The building hadn't changed much. The smell of old paper, strong coffee, and worn-down leather still lingered in the air. Claire arrived in a beige trench coat, heels too high for comfort, and an expression too smug for the moment. Mason followed her like a faithful golden retriever, holding the umbrella, her bag, her pride. I stood in the corner, wearing Harold's favorite navy shawl. I didn't speak. Not yet. Lillian Jameson, our family attorney, welcomed us with a professional warmth, but I saw it. The twitch of amusement in her lip when Claire declared, "We're just here to make this official. We know the estate is going to the trust. Mother won't be keeping much." And then she added with a bright smile, "I'm already working with a designer on the remodel. This house is getting a full upgrade." It was my house, Harold's house, our family's house. She didn't even glance my way when she said it. Lillian cleared her throat and began to read. But before the official will was even opened, Claire leaned over to Mason and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "She's out of the $7 million. Wait for it. She'll be shocked." That's when it happened. Lillian paused, lifted her eyes, and said, without skipping a beat, "Oh, you poor thing. You've got the wrong draft." Claire blinked. "Excuse me?" Lillian's voice didn't change, but her words struck like thunder. "This is Harold's final will, the only legal one, dated after the trust. He rewrote it, and it includes his wife, not his daughter's designer." And then she laughed, a soft, almost disbelieving chuckle. "You thought she was out? Honey, she is the estate." Mason sank into the chair. Claire's smile twitched, and I didn't move a muscle. I didn't have to. In New Chapter, Claire finally realized that she wasn't the puppet master. She was just another guest. She is the estate. Those words echoed in the room like a hymn Harold would have hummed under his breath after a checkmate. Claire didn't understand yet, but she would. Her face didn't fall right away. No, Claire was too polished for that. She blinked once, tilted her head, and gave Lillian a sharp, practiced smile. "One moment," she said, reaching for her phone. As if some app or PDF could save her. Mason leaned in to whisper something, but she waved him off. He flinched. The spell was breaking. I sat back in the leather chair, Harold's shawl still on my shoulders. I wasn't gloating. I wasn't angry. I was finished being underestimated. Lillian continued reading the will, line by line, legacy by legacy. Harold hadn't just left me the house. He left everything in my name, with conditions, smart ones. Claire was mentioned only once, and even then it was clinical, cold. To my daughter, Claire, I leave what she values most, her freedom. Unattached, unburdened, no ties to this estate. She blinked again, harder this time. Mason finally spoke. "Wait, that's it? There must be, she thought. Lillian raised a brow. I'm afraid Mr. Whitmore was very specific. This is legally final. No amendments, no contingencies. Claire's lips parted as if to object, but nothing came. Just silence. And then, that laugh again. Lillian's quiet, seasoned, been-through-it-all chuckle. It wasn't cruel. It was the laugh of a woman who's seen daughters try to outmaneuver mothers more times than she could count and never quite win. The room was so still you could hear the rain tapping the windows like applause. Claire clutched her designer bag. She stood. This isn't over. I finally spoke. Yes, sweetheart, it is. Not loud, not bitter, just honest. And when I looked at her, I didn't see the little girl I once braided ribbons for. I saw the woman she chose to become. In new chapter, the dinner afterward wasn't for celebration. It was for truth. And Claire didn't expect the seat I saved for her. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She didn't beg. But she did show up to dinner, and that told me everything I needed to know. The table was already set when Claire arrived. China, Harold and I only used for anniversaries. Candles, napkins folded like birds, the same casserole dish she used to call old people food, and one empty chair, right beside me. She stopped at the doorway like she'd walked into the wrong house, or maybe like she'd time-traveled and saw her future staring back at her. Mason stepped in after her. He looked sheepish, as if still deciding which side to sit on. He always was a coward. You invited me to this? Claire's voice carried an edge. Not fury, something worse. Humiliation. I just gestured to her chair. Dinner's warm, Harold's favorite. She didn't sit. She hovered, like a waitress deciding whether to drop the check. Ruth and David were already seated, my sister and Harold's best friend since college. Neither one spoke. They didn't have to. Their silence was a velvet noose around Claire's pride. I served the first spoonfuls. Claire finally slid into her seat, reluctantly. So, she started, I suppose this is some sort of victory lap? I smiled gently. It's a farewell. She narrowed her eyes. To what? To pretending. I reached down beside me and placed something on the table. A faded photo. Harold, Claire, and me on a Ferris wheel at Coney Island. Claire was 7, smiling, one arm on my shoulder, the other holding cotton candy. She barely glanced at it. You think one old photo redeems you? No, but it reminds me what I lost before I ever lost Harold. For the first time that night, Claire looked like she might cry, but tears never came. You didn't lose me. You pushed me. And you never looked back. She stood up before dessert, said she had calls, didn't even touch the pie. Mason followed. Only this time, he turned back, just for a second. For what it's worth, I think he made the right call. Then he left too. I sat back, letting the silence settle like the whipped cream on Harold's untouched slice. No anger, no regret, just peace. In new chapter, Claire didn't leave empty-handed, but what she took, she never expected. She wanted the money, but what she really needed was a mirror. And that mirror came in the form of a letter, just not the one she expected. The next morning, I found Claire's note on my porch. No envelope, just a folded piece of stationery I recognized from her office. She'd left it under the little garden gnome Harold always joked looked like his brother. Since you've made your point, I suppose you'll be removing me from the will entirely. But know this, I don't need your money. I never did. She underlined that last sentence twice. But something about the way it was folded, too neat, too careful, told me she wanted me to read between the lines. I didn't respond. Instead, I went upstairs and opened the safe Harold and I shared. Inside were two envelopes, one with Claire's name and one with mine in Harold's handwriting. I opened mine. It wasn't long, maybe 6 sentences, but it felt like a novel. If she turns cruel, forgive her. If she turns cold, stay warm. But if she ever tries to hurt you, even just with words, promise me you'll protect your peace. You gave her more than she remembers. I sat on the edge of the bed, the letter trembling in my hands. That's when I made the call. To our attorney. I need to release the second document, I told him. Are you sure? He asked. It changes things. I'm sure. By lunchtime, the courier had picked it up. It would be hand-delivered to Claire's office, with a signature required. It wasn't spite. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. 3 hours later, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I didn't need to. I could feel the panic through the silence before she spoke. You released it? Yes. You had no right. I had every right. He left that in my hands, not yours. She went quiet. Then, a laugh. But it wasn't amused. Then you really are who I thought you were. And with that, she hung up. I placed Harold's letter back in the safe, locked it, then walked outside and breathed deeper than I had in weeks. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was free. That's it. In New Chapter, Claire thought the inheritance was just numbers on a page, but Harold left behind something far more powerful. She didn't read the whole will, but I did. Every word he left behind for her. And the part she skipped was exactly what changed everything. The next day, I received a voicemail from Mr. Pendleton, our lawyer. You may want to check tomorrow's legal notice section. The clause has been enacted. That's all he said. But I knew exactly what he meant. You see, Harold wasn't just a sweet old man with a gentle sense of humor. He was also a planner, a man who anticipated betrayal like a weatherman sees a storm. Back when he first updated the trust, after Claire's second incident with borrowing money without permission, he added something poetic. He called it the character clause. If any primary heir displays sustained hostility, emotional manipulation, or coercive behavior toward the executor, the distribution of assets will shift proportionally to those who showed care, integrity, and respect. In short, if you acted like a vulture, you'd leave like one, hungry. And Harold left that definition wide open because he trusted me to know what it meant when I saw it. The lawyer didn't just deliver that document to Claire. He sent a courtesy copy to every member of the board at her law firm. And guess what? By noon the next day, she was on leave. I hadn't spoken to Claire's assistant in years, but out of nowhere, I got a short text. You didn't deserve what she did to you. Harold would be proud. It knocked the wind out of me. Not because I needed validation, but because somewhere in that big glass office tower, someone still saw me as more than the old woman who got lucky. I went out that night, alone. I sat at the very same diner where Harold and I used to meet when we were still pretending not to fall in love. I ordered his favorite pie. I didn't eat it. I just sat with it, lit by neon reflections in the window, and whispered, "You were right. Again." Claire may have thought the money was all there was, but Harold left something better than $1. He left a boundary, and I chose to honor it. The new chapter, when the family gathers for the final estate hearing, Claire walks in like she owns the room. She has no idea what's waiting in the last envelope. You made your choice, I told her, and Harold made his. The final estate hearing was scheduled in a small room at the back of the law office. Not some grand courthouse, just a quiet room with beige carpet, soft chairs, and the sound of a ticking wall clock. Claire walked in wearing a $2,000 blazer and the smuggest smile I'd seen since she got her first internship. "Don't look so surprised," she said, tossing her bag on the table. "I'm here to claim what's mine, even if I have to sue for it." I didn't flinch. Not anymore. Mr. Pendleton calmly handed her the envelope Harold had left with strict instructions. Deliver this only if she returns for the reading, after the clause is enacted. She tore it open like a spoiled child on Christmas morning. Inside, one sheet of paper, folded once. Her smile dropped. Her eyes scanned the line 3 times before she spoke. "What is this?" I already knew. It read, "Dear Claire, I watched you test your mother for years. You assumed her kindness was weakness. It never was. You chose money over love, and now that choice is permanent. Harold." Then, just beneath it, handwritten in his firm, neat script, "P.S. Your share has been donated in your name to a scholarship for women rebuilding their lives after family estrangement. Maybe you'll learn something from one of them." She didn't speak for a full minute. Then, in a voice I barely recognized, she whispered, "You're both insane." I stood. No, we're finally sane. Claire left without saying goodbye. I watched her walk out the door like someone who just realized the mirror had been facing them all along. That night, I didn't cry. I made tea, I put on Harold's old cardigan, and I sat in silence with the will. Not because I needed the money, but because I finally had something Claire had spent her whole life running from. Peace. Then, just beneath it, handwritten in his firm, neat script, "P.S. Your share has been donated in your name to a scholarship for women rebuilding their lives after family estrangement. Maybe you'll learn something from one of them." For the first time in 34 years, I ordered breakfast just for me. I sat by the window of a small cafe Harold and I used to walk past but never entered. We always said we'd go next time. There were no more next times, so I came alone. A little silver bell jingled over the door when I walked in. The waitress smiled without recognizing me, a rare pleasure in this small town. "Just one?" she asked gently. "Just me," I smiled. "That's enough." I chose a table by the window. The world outside moved slowly. A boy with a skateboard, a couple arguing over pastries, a woman with a baby strapped to her chest. Life. I ordered French toast, a fresh squeezed orange juice, and coffee. Real cream, not skim milk, not oat. The little things I used to skip for someone else's sake. At the table beside me, a woman about my age was talking to her adult daughter. I watched as she reached across the table and fixed the girl's collar without thinking. The daughter let her. My throat tightened, but not with pain, not anymore. I pulled out the notepad from my bag and started writing again. Not a grocery list, not a budget. Words, thoughts, my thoughts, just mine. "You don't stop being a mother," I wrote, "but you can start being a woman again." Claire didn't come back. Not that day, not the next. She still sends the occasional cold email, a just so you know message, full of financial updates and veiled resentment. But I no longer feel pulled to reply. The house feels different now. Not empty, open. I moved Harold's chair near the window. I let the dog onto the couch. I hung new pictures, ones I chose. And I go to the cafe now, every Thursday, table by the window, always alone. Not lonely, because the truth is, Harold didn't just leave me money. He left me freedom, and I'm finally learning how to spend it.